Tesla.
Yeah, there's nothing better than, Elon Musk honking.
No, that's all that worked.
And we're live.
Hello, hola. We're in a place called Vertigo. No, it's Pixel Pints. We are the only global podcast that talks about two things we enjoy, which is good beer and video games. We're not here to promote drinking. Please drink responsibly. Any beers or brews that we're talking about aren't sponsoring us, nor are games, because I say nasty things about games publishers, mainly EA and Square Enix.
It's a lot more Square Enix as late.
And ActiVision. And I'll just keep going. Basically, just turn this into the Podquisition, where Stephanie Sterling just says that the games industry, everything in the games industry is all horrible. But we're not here to do that. We're here to try and educate and
entertain.
It's
a great word.
That one.
Edutainment.
One thing I do despise is docudramas. Either do a documentary or a dramatization. Docudramas are fucking atrocious. And there goes the YouTube algorithm. But we don't care because we don't get enough viewers to monetize this anyway.
What about mockumentaries?
It depends, because they're going to the other side of it, because that would all be scripted because it's a comedy. Whereas the docudrama, they're trying to recreate historic events, normally really badly with some terrible acting, because they can't afford decent actors or writers.
Well, I mean, sometimes they do improv based. Sorry, go ahead.
Overall, I would agree with you on that. The only good one I saw was the docudrama or whatever, Grant, on History Channel a few years ago. That was the only one that was decent in both of the things that they did. Now, when you're saying docudramas, are you referring to ones where like they stop and have like the expert talking in front of the camera about different events, and then they intersperse it with like dramatized versions of different events and stuff like that happened? Or am I misunderstanding what you're talking about?
I'm just going to ignore that and continue doing the intro. You can follow us on social media at Pixel_Pints on Twitter and at Pixel Pints Pod on Instagram. We archive nearly all of our episodes on YouTube, and you can always watch us live on twitch.tv/Pixel Pints, unless we move over to Kick.
Unless you give who a kick?
Unless we move over to Kick, Liam. Have you not heard about Kick, the new competitor to Twitch?
No, please don't tell me. I don't need to know.
Did you say give Evan a kick? Is that what you said?
Yes, everyone should kick Evan.
Okay, that sounds far more logical.
Yes. Just because he's been a whiny bitch about the Microsoft controller, and I don't like the form factor of my PlayStation Series S. Evan, hope you're doing okay with your course and life, and well done on getting married, I suppose. Yeah. Anyway, Mitch, how are things in LA?
Busy, but
I hear you're releasing a game for the 14th time.
No comment. You want to shut me up? That's the best way to do it.
He meant you personally, not your employer.
Oh, let's see. I released a game a while ago, and not for the 14th time.
Oh, is it? How many times has The Last of Us been released? There was the original release, then there was on the PS3, then there was the PS4 release, then there was the remaster, then there was
No, I think those were both the same.
Yeah, the PS4
Yeah.
version
The
was
the,
the
the remastered version.
and then they released we have like a little bit of upgrades for the PS5. It was more like a patch if you owned it, so it's kind of a third.
Nah, there was no patch.
There was no patch.
There was no patch
Yeah.
for the PS4 version.
It's the original, the remaster, the remake, and then the PC version that comes out on the 28th.
Alright.
yeah, that's 14 times. I was right the first time.
It's like almost as bad as Skyrim. Like Jesus.
The cockroach of gaming.
The cockroach of gaming.
Yeah, that's what
Also
Steph
known as
Sterling.
powers as well.
That's what Steph Sterling called Skyrim because it was released so many times.
We should now just call this podcast the Keith Refers to Steph Sterling podcast,
We could do.
featuring
I do like
Steph
listening
Sterling.
I doubt that she would want to come on here and chat with us morons. Liam, how are things?
Very good, very good. I've gone over to the dark side, so clearly soon enough I will lose all time that I ever have, and I'll never be able to come on this podcast again because I just started playing Genshin Impact.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you just got married and have a kid on the way.
Oh no.
That's basically the same thing, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
No.
Genshin
It's
are
far
like-
more pressing prospect, unfortunately.
I mean, my coworkers, some of them are absolutely obsessed with Genshin Impact. Literally, they do it every night after work. It's like having another child. Literally, that's all. That's their baby.
It's a time sink, and you don't realise that you're spending loads of money on this thing unnecessarily. It's just like having a kid.
They don't spend the money. They're the we as the hardcore gamers, we know how to we don't want to pay. We rather just grind it out.
Yeah, exactly. I looked into it. You don't get sucked into the money pool because it amounts to very little.
Exactly.
If you start paying money, that's when you should stop playing.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that's the tagline for gambling as well. When the fun stops, stop. So basically, what you're saying is Genshin Impact is the equivalent of gambling.
Well, the rule with gambling is different because you should only pay what you're willing to lose.
People are willing to
Meanwhile,
lose it
Genshin
all,
just
but they
don't
can't
pay.
afford to technically lose it all.
Same with investing in the stock market.
Also, Keith, I thought for a second you said when the fun stops, stop playing. I was like, duh. Of course, when blackjack gets boring, you should stop playing.
Tell that to Destiny.
What, like 3 expansions ago?
And yet I buy it every year.
I was having to. I had my wife said to me yesterday, either shut up or stop playing the game, because I was moaning about the lobbies that I was getting on Apex Legends, and it was just awful. In the space of an hour, I think I managed to get 5 kills across all the games that I played, and I got all 5 of those in one game.
You
The
know,
rest of the time
it's a
just
rough
getting
time with
owned.
Keith when his wife actually has to say something about the games to his face.
I was annoying her because I was going, "Oh, for fuck's sake," over and over again.
I wish I'd done it.
I wish I was there.
Yeah.
Mikey, how are things with you?
Things are good right now. It's kind of like being in Yorkshire or whatever. It's just been gray and rainy. Like even though it's been warm here, it's been gray and rainy for the past couple of days. But things have been overall pretty good. Was out at a 3-day airsoft tournament last weekend, and then got to see John Wick last night. It was good.
Oh, I'm excited to see that. I heard the last hour and a half is some of the best action sequences ever. So jelly.
I just in loving memory of Lance Reddick, my wife and I have started rewatching Fringe, and I think after,
show. Oh, I love it so much. It's one of my favorite shows.
and I think after that we'll probably rewatch Bosch, just in time for the new series to come out on Amazon Prime later this year.
Nice.
Yep. I
Um,
actually really wonder what they're going to do with Destiny, because he was the voice
Shut
of
it down.
Zavala. He was the voice of Zavala, one of the key characters.
I mean, yeah, he's also Silas in Horizon Zero Dawn and Horizon Forbidden West, and he's spoiler warning alert, he's still alive. So like, I'm curious on how that's gonna happen too, because he looked like he was gonna start working with Aloy in this third game. So if they were gonna make one.
I keep forgetting you killed a god.
I keep wondering how many conversations are ongoing at these companies as to whether they'll like use AI to fill in the pieces. Because I bet there are some companies that are genuinely considering it.
Well, wasn't there going to be a test case? The Screen Actors Guild were
Oh god.
going to take someone to court because they were doing this. They were using AI. I think it was wasn't the Screen Actors Guild. I think it might have been Two Packs Estate. They've taken every snippet of everything he's ever said, and they put it through an AI thing, and they were using a projector to project his image, and they were creating new songs.
Oh,
I think his estate said, no, you can't do that.
Yeah,
I think they wanted to do a similar thing by casting James Dean in a film using like deepfake and AI technology.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was I'm sure there was something with the Screen Actors Guild on that as well.
I
They
think that's what you were thinking of.
I think to do what you're mentioning, Liam, I would doubt video game companies looking into that at the moment, just because the legality of it right now is so up in the air. You have to get legal permission from family members to try to mimic their voice, because it's not as easy as a process as it's making it out to be right now, just because even one company is doing a very good job with it right now. But even so, it's not as it's not a conversation happening, to be honest.
Yeah.
Legitimately.
And I think a lot of the companies that, or at least in this very specific case for Lance Riddick, a lot of the companies that were using him heavily for voices kind of respect him too much to,
I would hope.
yeah, or like basically Horizon and Bungie. Like I don't think they would do that, but to be honest, that maybe, like, I don't know, because for Destiny at least, I know that they have basically been working on seasons. Like, if you're in a season, they're already working on 2 seasons later, so at the very least they are almost a year ahead in what they would have been working on. So maybe they got what they needed, but they probably didn't finish everything for the final shape, which is the last expansion of Destiny as we know it. That's supposed to come out next year. So they very much might have to change some direction that they go with that.
Well, fortunate enough about voice over, a lot of that is done early. I mean, obviously they do bring them still in near the end if they need to like make adjustments to stuff, but at least they'll have hopefully a good sample size of his stuff going into it to finish it off. So
Anyway, we're not here to show our appreciation for Lance Reddick.
we like him very much.
Should we transition to beer talk, and we'll get through this quite quickly because we've got quite a meaty topic to get to today.
Yeah, and it's early in the morning, so I'm not drinking.
I'm
drinking water.
Alani for you.
No, that's for later. I need that for 3:30.
Right. Am I, Mikey? Yeah, I take it you're not drinking at this time in the morning, although you sometimes do.
At this point, the only thing I have is a good old standby of Lord Chesterfield. So it's been on this podcast many a time, so I don't need to go and crack one of those open. But I will get a cup of tea at the first possible convenience.
Liam, what flavour Robinson squash might you have, or are you on the cola?
I'm on the cola.
Just me then. So I'll give you the choice. I've already poured myself something, but I've got two beers that I could have from Winton Brewery, both from Scotland. I saw the other day, this was Ockeye, dark and mild. It's only 3.5% ABV. Or I've got the Barry Swally, which
Sounds
is
like a guy from high school. And now joining the football team, it's Barry Swally.
So I'll give you the choice. Do you want my Ockeye or do you want the Barry Swally?
Let's go Barry Swally.
Barry all the way. I'm glad to see that the weird colored audacious cans are also over there, because in my mind, like in the UK, every beer bottle looks like either a Heineken or like a Samuel Smith bottle. Looks like it was from 150 years ago. But I'm glad to see that like you get the weird like.
Oh, there's some absolute batshit crazy stuff. I've had Anarchy Brewing from Newcastle. They do some absolutely insane can design. But there you go.
Oh,
and
I love
the pale ale.
I love that glass.
It's my Stormtrooper glass. Oh, very malty. Really biscuity.
Does that mean like a cookie or a scone?
No, not your kind of biscuits, as in like a.
You mean weedy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you get a hint of, well, you get quite bitter actually, which is quite nice. It says refreshing and aromatic, which it is, and you get a really kind of deep hoppiness on your palate just after swallowing. I really quite enjoy that. I might go back and buy some more, but they're quite expensive. I think this was £3.80 a can from a craft beer place near me, so It's not exactly cheap.
Aye.
And then the other thing that I'm drinking was just Fuller's London Pride, which is very nice.
Real quick, for a lot of your UK-based beers and stuff like that, do you guys have like certain regions that are like known for their hops, or are you guys importing like Cascadian hops and all those different ones? Because like here in the United States, most of our hop production is in a few centralized locations, like on the northern border, like North Midwest and Northwest.
So the main producer of hops is Kent, which is why Shepherd Neame started there, which is allegedly the oldest industrial brewery in the world. And that's where you get the Spitfire is their most famous beer, which is really heavily hopped ale. But quite a lot of companies here are bringing in quite a lot of the American hops now to make all of the trendy New England IPAs, which I take them or leave them.
Even us here, I can take them or leave them.
Yeah, it just seems to be taking over. But enough of that. Thank you everyone for listening so far. The person the bot in chat who said that we can pay for likes, thank you very much. That's really helpful.
You're helping us one step closer to monetization.
Right, let's get on to some game industry moves that we think are worse than Microsoft's heinous. Heinous a strong enough word? For PlayStation fans, let me know if heinous is a strong enough word for your whining about Microsoft buying ActiVision Blizzard King. Consolidation is so bad.
Well,
you can still get all the same goddamn games. Phil Spencer's bent over backwards to get through this acquisition process, and promised more than anyone would ever to appease the whiny PlayStation fans and whiny PlayStation Jim Ryan to get this through But it's still quite possibly the worst thing in some people's minds that the games industry has ever done, but not mine.
But hold on, can I just say, as one that in the bold predictions said that the acquisition would not go through, I think I'm making everyone sweat a little bit for how much it's like not going through as smoothly this year.
Yeah.
Well, you can't spell heinous without anus, and that's kind of what this thing has been like the whole time.
A pain in the anus.
Because they hate us, because they ain't us.
Who would like to go first? Unless someone thinks that Microsoft buying
got one for you.
Activision Blizzard King is the worst thing.
No, it's not the worst thing. I got one for you, Keith.
Let's go.
You'll love this. EA buying. Can you guess?
That's half of my examples.
But BioWare.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because what have they? Well, they released 2 great games after they're being purchased, and then it's just been nosedive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, literal freefall.
Mm-hmm.
But without any oxygen masks or parachutes.
I've got to say, though, that I feel like a lot of the things that have gone wrong with BioWare actually may have been more BioWare's fault than EA's.
You take that back, because EA forced them to put out Anthem when it wasn't ready. EA forced them to put out Mass Effect Andromeda when it was not ready, and they said it was not ready.
Let's have a think about this, though. Like,
Yeah, they didn't. EA didn't write Mass Effect Andromeda.
yeah, exactly.
Hold on, but
would the
Andromeda
extra have made? Sorry.
Oh no, you go
for it,
finish.
Mike.
Oh,
Okay.
all I was going to say
would
is
an
that
extra year.
You're
We need
both
a
so
talking-
polite. You
we need
ended
a
up talking
talking
over one another.
we need a talking stick. You, Liam.
Okay. I say my question would have been: would an extra year of development really made Mass Effect Andromeda that much better? It would have made it less buggy, but better? Probably not.
That's all I was going to say. That's all I was going to say about Andromeda, is that there were problems with the design and the story and what they were doing there. Like, yes, they could have polished it up for another year and a half, and yes, it would have been flawlessly technically, but going to things like going to an entire other galaxy and you're still interacting with the same aliens, like you're still doing, like, did they add any races whatsoever?
One race.
Well,
race.
technically 2 if you count the.
But yeah, like
that's true.
the original Mass Effect trilogy world had a bunch of cool alien races and stuff, and you go to an entire other galaxy and you're like, oh, life is basically the same here, except for maybe the large monsters or I don't know, whatever. But
I guess
that all seem to exist on every planet for some reason. The same monsters.
my counter argument to your arguments is that
could I just finish something? Because before I just wanted to make another point, or a couple points. 1 point for and 1 point against. 1 point was also that Anthem. I think EA made the wrong decision with Anthem, in that they should have just cancelled the bloody thing instead of, I don't know, putting it out at all. And I would also say that I guess 1 point that can be made in BioWare's favour over EA is that they got forced to develop these games on Frostbite, which I think was a terrible mistake.
Yeah, I'm. So, one, Mass Effect Andromeda was, like, if you go back to like reviewers after, a lot of them did a post-mortem of being like, okay, after the bugginess aside, how is this game? And a lot of them said the game's actually good, if not great. They like a lot of the new elements the game offers. Yes, is there not as many races? No. But they did like the story a lot. And I felt as if the bugs overshadowed everything else that Mass Effect would have had to offer. Was it going to be a 10? No. Was it going to be an 8.5? Probably. And I think that would have been good enough for them as a start for the new franchise. There's no way that game would have gotten sevens, Liam. Don't shake your head like that. You know that. You
No,
know.
I think that game is the definition of a 7. Like,
But we're not talking
I
about.
don't think it's as bad as a lot of people make out.
But we're not talking about you. We're talking about reviewers.
Well, I disagree with reviewers then.
But that's I don't disagree.
And Mitch, as we know, these things don't come down to reviews. It comes down to the public. And I can tell you, Mass Effect fan that opinions on the game aren't good. You know, and I don't think an extra year in development could have cured that. I'm more positive on it.
Matt, Evan, and I spoke for nearly 2 hours doing a deep dive into Mass Effect Andromeda. What would that be? About 5 years ago now, which spawned this shit show that we do weekly. I mean, amazing content brought to your ears and eyes via the power of the internet. Where I see the main failing of EA is the same, and again, this is just suspect on my part. The same thing that's cursed the Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League, which was, where's our live service game? Oh, we're making this new story game set in this world. Where's our live service game? Yeah, it's gonna have really cool monsters and people fly around in kind of Iron Man suits. Is it a live service game? That's where I
think even at the time that wasn't planned to be a multiplayer game too. It was meant to be a single player game, and then EA forced their hand to make them make it a multiplayer game.
Yeah, and so that's where I'd say that Anthem is the biggest downfall of BioWare, and I don't see that being a BioWare decision. I see that being we want a multiplayer ongoing live service.
Mm-hmm. And if I think we've noticed over the years, EA is not afraid to push developers to make a specific type of game out of the ideas that they create to just make a game. So like an example, a studio could have an idea of a game and they'll say, we want it though to be this kind of game. You need to change it to match this kind of game because this is what we need, instead of allowing the creatives to be full creative.
We'll go round and say, do we agree or disagree that EA buying BioWare is a worse industry move than Microsoft buying ActiVision Blizzard King? I'll start.
I would say it's equal.
No. I don't think it's worse. I think overall, EA's strategy of buying studios and then taking them out to the shed and cleaving them over the head and then dumping them in the compost, that's probably a worse one. But not necessarily this one. Mikey.
For me, it's close, but it's biased just because of a little bit of place I've spent a lot of my time over the past couple years. To be honest, I think either Bungie, I don't know if it was Bungie joining or Activision buying Bungie, I think was one of the actual worst conglomerations or joinings of the industry for a couple reasons. And because I know that Bungie wanted to get out of making Halo. It was like, we've already done 1, 2, 3. And Bungie also did Reach and ODST, correct?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was 5. So that was 5 Halo games. And everyone, like, whether you prefer one or the other, they hold those 5 games up, I'd say, exceedingly higher than anything that 343 has done. The 4, 5, and now Infinite. And so Bungie being acquired by Activision caused 2 things. One, it caused
they weren't acquired. They just had a partnership in regards to Activision would publish their game, but they were an independent studio.
Okay,
I remember correctly.
Okay, I guess that's why they had the ability to buy back Destiny, I guess.
Correct, because EA just owned EA had partial ownership of the property.
Gotcha. Okay, so it's not the same. Like, Bungie wasn't owned by Activision, but I guess Destiny was owned by Activision, but Bungie had the ability to buy it away from them. Was that
Kinda.
Not
was that the
really.
case?
The only
Kind-
reason Activision gave it to them was because of it not meeting their expectations, essentially.
Correct. So
Yeah.
so it was a two-pronged thing. One, Bungie going over to, and in whatever capacity it was, working with Activision on Destiny. Number one, it created a need for Microsoft to build up Halo out of a new group. And I'm all for giving people chances to do things, but I don't think overall everyone's expectations have been met with 4, 5, and Infinite. Like, you've basically 3 games that aren't living up to the legacy of the original trilogy and the spin-offs. And number 2 is that even though Destiny did have a lot of success and it built up big enough, though it didn't get big enough to Activision's standards, and that's why they allowed it to be bought and go off. It put Bungie into a hole where it's like, all right, we have one big thing that makes us money, and there's nothing that we're going to do except Destiny in these 9 years since thank you, Lily. And so Bungie, a very competent developer, has
Did
been
you just
doing
get handed a kumquat?
a clementine or a cutie or a mandarin orange, whatever you want to call it. Yes, fruit delivery. And so Bungie has now been stuck doing the same game for 9 years, and it's hard for them to not do that game because it makes them all of the money that they make. And so people have only gotten Destiny from Bungie over the last 9 years, which, when people, I'm sure, would actually have loved to have gotten a single player with multiplayer stuff, but a beloved campaign that they could go, because people still play through the campaigns of all those Halo games to this day. They go back and they're like, oh, let's go play the legendary campaign.
Just not Halo Infinite, am I right?
Yeah. Ugh. Let's go play the campaign of Halo 2, or let's see how fast we can beat the Halo 3 campaign on Legendary. Let's do it. Like, people love doing that to this day, and we don't have that anymore because Bungie is so caught up in this live service game that, ironically, there's tons of content from that game. The single player, or you could play a single player content that is not accessible by that game anymore because they had to content vault a lot of the main campaigns and stories that they did of Destiny over the years. So, like, stuff that you have paid for, like, is no longer accessible because the game keeps moving and shifting forward. And so overall, despite the literally thousands of hours I have played Destiny, I think the industry would have actually been better if Bungie was allowed to make games more akin to their original 3 to 5 Halo titles, just in a different universe. Because the reason I do play Destiny is that their gameplay, Bungie's gameplay with that the first-person shooter gameplay, is one of the best in the industry. It's extremely cathartic and satisfying to do and shoot all the things that Bungie provides, but the stories and the disc that you can put in and go play a Bungie title are not here anymore. And I think that deal, whatever, that pact, that contract that happened with Activision was the beginning of that, and that is why I think that is one of the worst things. Now, that was one of the worst endings ever. And anyone can rebut or respond if they want.
Mitch, you're looking pensive. Why don't you retort first?
I just think it's fine. I mean, I don't think it's worse. Like, my big thing about this whole Microsoft acquisition is that I don't trust Microsoft, because Microsoft's track record with managing developers is bad. It's not great. Like, we have examples that are constantly there. The only good shining piece, which I would say is just above average studio development, is Gears. Like, they make beautiful games, but like, the gameplay is what I played 10 years ago. I don't see as much innovation in what they're trying to do with the franchise. And I think even Gears 5 was just an above average, good, not great title. and that's kind of underestimated. Whereas at least Destiny is still a solid title, like regardless of anything. Like it didn't really matter what publisher published it. Like the game still came out. The game was still solid. Its shooting mechanics are better than any of the 343 Halo games they've ever made in their entire career. Unfortunately, like I guess maybe Halo Infinite is close enough to the closest they've ever gotten to actually matching the feel of a real Halo game. But, you know, I actually have to vehemently disagree on that one. I don't think it's worse. I think it's actually better than better than whatever you could ever expect, because they got to do what they wanted. They got to walk away when they wanted, and they still get to make what they want. I don't see what the bad part about the situation is.
I guess part of it was, and because I know Bungie wanted to make Destiny. It's not Activision approached them and said, make us a semi-live service game or whatever. So they got to make what they wanted, but working with Activision is where they had to introduce things like the Eververse store and like the microtransaction stuff outside of the expansions that happened, and it ballooned to a point where I felt that Bungie didn't have any resources to do anything else, and it feels like they themselves are tired of working on this same game for 9 years.
I can tell you right now, they are not tired of Destiny. They are definitely not tired of Destiny. I can say that adamantly as I've spoken to some Destiny devs before. Like they're not bored of it. They love that title so much. They are so adamant about how great the title is doing, and they're more excited about the new stuff that they've been doing than ever before, because they're trying more creative things that they've never tried before, and it's so awesome to see what them be able to do things succeed.
That's actually good to hear, because sometimes it's hard for me to parse out what is like marketing of like, we're so excited, this is the biggest thing we've ever done, like, and it sounds so rote compared to all these other marketing tidbits and stuff like that. I'm like, of course you're going to say that, like.
Well, I think it's your right assumption to always assume if you do something for 9 years, you'd get bored of it, right? It's just a fair assessment that someone would think that. I think the one thing that what makes games different than like other things is constantly you're innovating, you're creating new solutions, you're finding new problems. Like it's not like what's the word I'm looking for? When they put a new thing in a game, it like takes a lot of time to do, and a lot of problem solving, a lot of collaboration, and all that kind of stuff. And that stuff is not boring, because like it's new. It's trying to push what they're trying to do as a developer and trying to push out new ideas.
Versus like putting on the same Broadway production for 9 years straight.
Correct.
Like it's the same production, and it has the same bombastic music and everything like that, and people cry at the end and stuff like that. But you've been literally doing the same thing for 9 years.
Exactly. The steps to get there may be the same in regards to like, you know, we got to have this done in 3 months, like type of like timelines might be the same, but like to actually like go in the nitty gritty of everything, every day something's new, every day something's different, and it can be stressful, but also can be very exciting all at the same time. And especially when you're implementing new things and trying to create new solutions to solve problems. I would say if you're a big problem solving person, like video game industry is amazing for those kinds of people, because literally there are problems every day, and you have to every day come up with new solutions to solve problems.
Yeah. I guess like
I'm somewhat disinterested in I got bored of Destiny 2 as soon as I finished the campaign, and then it's just kind of what's left. Oh,
yeah, fair enough.
You just do the same shit over and over again, says the guy who plays Apex Legends. That
yells about his matchmaking.
I don't think it's as bad, anywhere near as bad.
No, I mean, and like taking into account what Mitch said or whatever, like I'm almost willing to withdraw my my ticket for that, because because I mean, if they are still wanting, like, if they are still in love with what they're doing, and the players keep playing, then Sure. Like, what's the problem with that then?
Well, the players can keep playing Call of Duty even after the acquisition on their PlayStation with their haptic feedback controllers. I But I don't understand what's all the fucking whining is about. I really don't, because you don't, Liam. Why is no one coming up with the kind of vitriol over Tencent having a stake in over 300, yes, 300 video game companies? Why is everyone bitching and whining about Microsoft buying Activision Blizzard King, but no one is talking about Tencent?
Because Tencent is only trying to be power behind the throne, and Microsoft is actually a platform holder. I think that's the only difference.
Yeah,
Thanks, Liam.
pretty much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, they're basically incredibly smart with the way that they just do things little bit by little. They up their stake in games companies every year, just a little, and they sort of they take a very hands-off approach with everybody they invest in, which is also very smart. So it's kind of funny because it's like, they're a very Chinese corporation who serves the interests of their government very heavily, but the sort of, you wouldn't know that from the way that they run their business and the way that they put the places in which where they put their money. And it kind of sucks because I kind of appreciate it. I'm sort of like, look at the way that business is run. They know what they're doing. They're running a tight ship there. But on the other side of the coin, I hate it.
Wow. Is Tencent the one that owns all of or a majority stake in Riot?
They own all of Riot.
They own all of Riot.
Yeah. That's the I to answer your question, Keith. I think it's also not necessarily like they're a platform holder. Yes, that's one thing. But I think the other element here is like Tencent doesn't own they own 100% of one company, but the rest of it is they own bits and pieces, which means they don't have a majority.
They also own a lot of stuff. Like, it's funny because it's stuff that's just not like famous to people. But there's a lot of companies there that are responsible for basically assisting in the development of pretty much all of the AAA games that go on the market. You don't know it, but like, it's kind of funny when you think about Tencent owning pretty much most of the games development assistance studios that are.
But you're talking about development support studios, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
So those support studios don't get to make big call decisions about what goes into the title. They have to reach out to the
No, they don't. But that's still a large majority of the employees.
Yeah,
but that's not my point though. My point is, like, since they don't own the majority of multiple companies like Microsoft would do with this acquisition, they don't get to fully 100% influence what goes into these games or how well these games could do, because they aren't the decision makers at the table. They have a say and they could say something, but it doesn't mean that they have to be listened to, and that's the difference.
Here's all the game companies that Tencent owns more than 50%. Funcom, Athlon Games, Digital Extreme, Splash Damage, Riot Games, Shark Mob, Sumo Group, Turtle Rock Studios, Wake Up Interactive, Valhalla Game Studio, Inflection Games, Fulcrum Games, Supercell, Grinding Gear Games, and then the next would be Epic Games, but that's 40%. So they own 100% of about 1, 2, 3.
Wait, I thought you said it was 50%.
Over 50%.
More than 50%.
Yeah, I said it was more than 50%. So
which is controlling interest. So correct, they can go into a room and say, "Do this."
Correct, but a majority of those are support studios. Only 2, I think 3 of them you said were actual studios that actually have full calls on their titles, like Turtle Rock Studios.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6,
Riot.
7, 8. There's 9 that there's 100% ownership, and then 84% of Supercell, Grinding Gears 80. And then Epic Games 40, and then everything else is just like Liam said, like little bits and stuff like that.
What I would say is interesting, having read briefly yesterday about what happened after they bought 40% of Epic.
it doesn't list a percentage, but they do list majority for Fat Shark, which is the
Warhammer.
yes, thank you.
I think also, if I remember correct, didn't Sony buy a percentage of Epic as well? Everyone's kind of getting the Epic pie. It's not.
No, it was something like 2 or 3%.
Well, that's 5% or something like that. But
They wouldn't be able to afford more now that Tencent bought up 40% because it boosted the share price so massively. But when they came, since Tencent bought Epic, so quite a lot of the decisions that people don't like. So what's happened with the Epic Game Store, that can be directly linked back to decisions that were made corporately after Tencent bought into Epic, making UE4 free, but you have to pay a royalty on all of the game sales that you make. That was another decision that was made by Tencent to say this is how we want you to operate under this type of model. And they've taken quite a lot of the learning that they've made from in either outright owning or significant investment in mobile and brought that into other places that they've invested in. I see Tencent's involvement not necessarily, well, after all, it made me think about Tencent, one, because Liam wanted to talk about it and Liam hasn't done much talking about it for a while now. But there were the congressional hearings about TikTok. I mean, who gives a shit? It's a dancing app. People do dances on it for 60 seconds. The Chinese government aren't going to care. But Tencent owning, are they the biggest media company in the world now?
I don't disagree with you. I just don't think there are, like, I don't think it's worse than the Microsoft acquisition, but I still think it's bad. If I don't think both are, I don't think one is good and one is evil. I think they're both bad decisions on both ends.
Can I just say it's a little bit... one of the things that bothers me about this conversation is we really don't know what the Microsoft division of ActiVision Blizzard is going to be. It's like we can all think it's bad, and from a perspective, you know, whereby in large companies and basically the games industry becoming smaller because of it is a bad thing. But other than that, we just don't know. So it's kind of hard to sort of gauge how bad it really is. Two things that I could say about it is I'm glad that Microsoft are buying them because it means no more Bobby Kotick in the industry. It means that all of the workers at Activision will hopefully have a much better time working at Activision. And
Liam, did you hear that Bobby Kotick actually threatened to kill someone?
Yes.
But then nothing happened about it.
Funny that, isn't it? Yeah.
And then they give him a golden parachute.
Like Factor says, he's a really nice guy, though, you know.
Yeah, threatened to kill someone.
I mean, there's a difference. There's no win situation with Bobby Kotick in the end, but honestly,
he's won capitalism. There's nothing you can do.
Yeah, which is really ridiculous because, to be honest, he shouldn't have either. He shouldn't be ahead of Activision, and he shouldn't be getting a golden parachute for all the bad things he's done to people.
There's no way to deal with that, unfortunately.
How about Microsoft does the right thing and doesn't give him a fucking parachute?
That's not up to them. They literally can't do that. It's either you buy Activision...
Then don't do the deal and stand on a higher principle.
Or you do nothing. Okay, and then Tencent will buy them and they'll be completely morally fine with doing whatever you like.
Well, I'll respect Microsoft more for it.
Well, I honestly respect Microsoft for giving him a golden parachute and taking the company away from him. But
it's not taken away from him. It's not taking anything. He's going to probably still have stock in the company. He's probably going to be making money off of that company. That whatever Microsoft does with the company, like it's not as simple as he's going away and he's never coming back. He is still going to be tied into Activision forever.
There is no scenario in this situation that doesn't benefit Bobby Kotick. There just isn't. But there is a situation that could benefit us. And I prefer that situation over the other. Yeah, and the people at ActiVision Blizzard, which is what's most important.
The only other it's not a mass thing, but it is a granular acquisition, is just Embracer Group. all the different companies and developers that Embracer Group is bringing under their umbrella. What's funny is like the name is so like, oh, Embracer, it's like umbrella, Embracer, like, but so far Embracer really, aside from in a way saving like a bunch of games that probably didn't deserve a second chance, but they gave them a second chance anyway, because Embracer is the one who grabbed all those THQ games, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
THQ Nordic.
Yeah, it was Nordic that turned Embracer. Yeah. So they actually saved a lot of games. So like I wouldn't call this one worse than the Microsoft acquisition, but like they are just slowly themselves embracing a lot of different stuff. I mean, for crying out loud, they bought the rights to the Tolkien estate, or like the Tolkien properties and stuff like that.
Just to make games only. They don't own.
No, they own
the literature rights as well.
They don't own the TV rights though. That is to Amazon currently, the contract.
they sold it off to Amazon to pay for it.
Oh.
They
the
bought.
TV rights are weird.
Yeah, they bought the rights to the intellectual property of the Lord of the Rings. So people have to go cap in hand to them. Literally,
I would even argue that technically, if you're looking at like. You're looking at Tencent, but then you're looking at Embracer. I would say Embracer's the worst one of the two acquisition type major party groups, because if you look at it again, like to my point, like also Tencent's more of, and again, I'm not, by saying this, I'm not trying to excuse and saying like what they're doing is good. I'm not a big fan of what they're doing, but what they're doing is more business minded rather than intellectual property minded. So they're just buying little pieces of the pie to just take
money plays. That's all.
Yeah, they're just there for like the stock price basically. That's all they're doing. They're not there to like make intellectual properties and things like that, where Embracer is. And so I would even make the argument Embracer is probably more like the worst one in compared to Tencent.
You're coming at it from too much of an artistic standpoint on that.
Yeah.
So Tencent are behind the scenes just say, oh, we just want to make money, and you're focusing on the artistic interference, or don't interfere with in my artistic vision kind of thing. Whereas I'd say that the two aren't mutually exclusive. So you can have someone make a business decision, say we want to make lots of money, and this is how you're going to do it, or we believe. Because when you're that goddamn rich, you don't phrase things as a diktat. You can phrase them as a question, and if people don't get the answer, then you dictate to them. But if you're in a room with some executives from Tencent, and they say we've got a 40% stake in it, or 18.5%, or whatever it happens to be. If you're an executive from Tencent and you go into a room and say, we think you should monetize this following a mobile strategy, say, no, we don't want to do that. We want to do this. Okay, we'll just buy the remaining controlling stock and then do it ourselves. Because that's how that kind of company would operate. If they see that you're not making as much money as they believe that you could, they'll just buy you up and then say, this is how you're doing it now.
I don't disagree. So, I'm trying what I'm and again, like both are on pretty equal footing in my view. I'm just like, if I like what is going to have instant direct impact, that's what I think is going to have the more direct instant impact compared to like technically, yeah, they could try to buy the shares. Doesn't mean that'll work. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It's not a for sure shoe in. Yes, it is more common that it would happen. But I'm trying to say they're pretty much equal footing on my point, but I feel like as if Embracer Group, based off my last point, would have been the worst of the two.
Because they have direct control over all the IP.
Correct. And that is actually, I would say the IP is probably even more powerful than actually the studios themselves. Because any studio could make any IP, but you can't remake that IP again.
Liam, did you have one? I put Tencent into your mouth.
I did. Well, it's weird because from this point of view, I sort of agree that there hasn't been an acquisition this banner, but as Activision Blizzard, historically. And I thought about like studios like Pandemic at EA, which was far worse acquisition because they literally bought them 2 years before just shutting them down, and they shut them down before they even released the Saboteur, and I still hate EA for that with a burning rage and passion. But then there's also studios Microsoft have bought like Rare and Lionhead, but at the end of the day, none of that really comes close to the level of this acquisition. So I just thought something that happened recently was the Saudi Arabian Investment Fund, which is basically the crown prince of the country. He just decided to, I'm just going to buy SNK, and he just buys SNK. And now to me, and this might be somewhat biased, because from my perspective, that just means, I'm never going to buy an SNK again. I'm just not going to. Because
What do you mean? They've got spotless human rights record.
Exactly, and it's just like, it's if an acquisition means taking that company completely off the board, at least for me, which is biased because I'm sure other people wouldn't have a problem with buying those games. From my perspective, I do find that to be the most egregious, and that's the best sort of thing I could come up with, because there hasn't really been an acquisition in the history of the games that just remove something from the board completely on a moral level, for me personally. So that's the best I could come up with.
Okay. I'm not going to talk about acquisitions. I'm going to talk about a company's strategy. And that company is Square Enix. And what they have done over the last, I don't know, 5 years, probably if longer, is completely forget that they're a games company with any reasonable expectation of sales and profit, and how to actually run a company, and what people who buy their games and consume their products actually care about. I think that the board at Square Enix have lost their fucking minds, if I'm honest. So they put out a load of high quality games. Like the last Tomb Raider, I didn't play it. I heard it was a bit dull, but you can't deny the quality of the three games in terms of what they did technically and what the first one did in terms of revamping that franchise.
I love those games.
Great.
But with all of the releases, they said it sold below expectations. So your expectations are fucking bonkers. Is that you're never going to sell? Was it 70? Was it 70 million across the three games they wanted?
I thought they said 15 million. They wanted to sell 15
million
on the first game, and it didn't sell that. And then the second game, it still didn't sell that. And then they were even more upset. Even after, I think that's the reason why they did the whole Microsoft 1 year exclusive, to try to make up for funds that they thought they were going to miss out on for the second title. And then they got more blowback for it.
And then it was, we don't actually want to make any games for the Western market anymore. We're just going to focus on games that are focused on the Japanese market. Oh, but by the way, we've got a load of NFTs you can buy. Oh, has anyone heard about NFTs? No one cares about NFTs. Only idiots and scam artists care about NFTs.
But like even as that was the one quote or concept that I couldn't even fathom, because I'm like, you do realize that the Japanese market has not been the largest market for video games for many, 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 many years, correct? Right?
Yeah. And they've put out a load of, they've cancelled 3 live service games in the last year. Chocobo Racing, gone. There was the other one that was based on Final Fantasy. There was, and they just said,
First Soldier?
Yes, that's the one.
It's a mobile game, though.
Yeah, well, it's just a mobile game that people were spending money on, and they just shut it down and didn't offer any refunds.
Well, yeah, I can agree with that.
Like, quite possibly, this is some of the shittiest business behaviour in the last 5 years, 10 years maybe, has come from Square Enix, because again, I just don't know what they're thinking. And seemingly every decision is focused on losing the money. Because they even came out and said, if we didn't release Marvel's The Avengers as a live service game piece of shit that no one wanted, they would have been profitable for that year. They would have made a profit. Instead, they made a loss because they released this game that no one wanted, and they were trying to force a live service game down our throats. And everyone said, no, go fuck yourselves. And they're doubling down on the play to earn mechanic. That was the outgoing message from the last CEO, which is, and they're putting someone in place who was from their crypto division. So, what are you doing? But no, Microsoft buying Call of Duty is the worst thing happening on the planet right now. Sorry, that was just my... I probably should have saved that for the end of the year show, because Square Enix are definitely going to be McWumble's shittiest game company of 2023.
Well, McWumble, if you wanted to pose this question to the topic, you could have said that perhaps Square Enix buying Eidos was the worst acquisition.
Well, buying them, basically mismanaging them and then selling them off for pittance. But it's part of the overall Square shittiness. I'm trying to think of a good descriptive, but I couldn't, so I just went with shittiness.
But I think in that also that we got 3 good Tomb Raider games. So it wasn't all bad.
I didn't like them.
I liked them a lot.
The first one was good, the second one was just too much of the same, and the third one I didn't care about.
I really like the second one mechanically. Second story is not very good. I like the first one's story, and the third one is really, really, really good mechanically. But story is really flat for me.
The Tomb Raider games, very short. Tomb Raider games are the games I wish the Uncharted games played like.
It's fair. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah, like I wish I had the story of the Uncharted games and the gameplay of the Tomb Raider games.
Yeah. Yeah, I
think you guys are slightly missing my point, which is...
Oh, I know.
We're just trying to put a happiness on this because you would put us in a large depression.
They are just there to try and suck your wallets dry and mentally and bash you over the head mentally with the NFTs until you give in and start buying them.
What are you talking about, McWomble? They're giving me Final Fantasy. Give me more Final Fantasy. I want Final Fantasy. I want Final Fantasy.
They're going to give you Final Fantasy.
I will say.
But what they will do with it, and then Liam, you come in, because you're always welcome, is that how do we know that the next Final Fantasy after 16 isn't going to be play to earn? Or so you can play Final Fantasy, and if you log in every day for a month, we'll give you a free NFT. Or you can design your own NFTs within the Final Fantasy universe, and we'll put them in game, because this is what they want people to do. They want you to make the game and pay them for the privilege.
One thing I think you need to be aware of, because I don't think things are nearly as bad.
Is it my heart rate right now? So I shouldn't be getting so angry about a company.
I don't think things at Square Enix are nearly as bad as you think they are. I think most of the products that you're talking about aren't even being advertised to Western markets, because they know that this shit won't. It just, they know that nobody
just
in the
because
West is going to
shitty
accept
over
that
there
shit.
doesn't mean it's not shitty.
No, but this is the point. Is it's a weird kind of strange thing with Japan, is that they just swallow the shit wholesale over there. It's an epidemic of games being launched and then basically going down the toilet within a year of release, and people spending thousands of pounds, thousands in yen, or even hundreds of thousands. Yeah,
Tens of thousands.
Yes,
But and this is also that's pretty true across the entire Asian area.
yeah.
So like your Korea, your Vietnam, Like a lot of those countries
It's kind of
play
crazy how
play
nobody
like that.
seems to care about their money just being taken from them and these games being shut down, and suddenly everything they work towards is just gone in the ether. Doesn't matter. And right now, it's sound business strategy because they just accept it, and I don't understand it. None of that stuff would ever sell over here
So
in the
do all those
West.
people who drink beer. I mean, they pay for something and it's gone in sometimes seconds, and all
Well,
you have
yeah.
is kind of this weird feeling in the pit of your stomach, sometimes indigestion. Like,
Well,
come on,
maybe they
man.
think of it from that perspective, but it's like people that like have the
Yeah.
WoW account in, I don't know, 2005 still have all of their stuff available to them if they log back in now. And while it's like, oh, none of that matters because I'm never going to log back into WoW, but it's nice to know that it's still there if I ever did, because you
Unless
feel a
someone went
certain.
into your game and stole it all, or built it, put it onto an online store that, and then I don't know, filled your house with blocks of TNT and blew it up, not
So
knowing that you'd.
Bobby Kotick did it personally.
Yeah,
Or
Bobby
just or
Kotick,
just
what a
or just
wanker.
Nintendo offering you things to buy and then bringing out a new platform and saying, "No,
Buy it again.
you can't have the things that you buy. We're going to shut that down." Did you
Mm.
guys see that article of the guy who bought everything on the Wii shop and the DS shop and spent $22,000 to acquire and download every game that had ever been put on the eShop?
Well, if that's his choice and he's got the money, he should obviously be investing in crypto, because I've heard that's going really well for everyone.
But just to point out, Keith, is I think they made a smart decision selling off all of their Western development because they haven't got a clue what they were doing with it.
Yeah,
And
well,
if you just take their Japanese stuff and you look at that as to how successful that is, they
yeah,
would be having some of the most profitable years they've been having ever. Doesn't make
yeah,
it
Would
they've,
morally
they've,
right,
Ethan,
but
would you prefer this approach that Square Enix did, or would you prefer what Konami did? Is basically uh,
we're going to
put
make
like,
pachinko machines and.
well, they were like, we literally make way more money from this stuff. Why would we bother with video games? And they
Well,
just
I just think,
wholesale stopped making games
yeah.
versus
Well,
making bad decisions. They just made no decisions at all.
this is why Konami. I don't consider them to be a game company anymore. I don't.
well, they
Um,
kind of are because they've sold off their pachinko business now. So all they have is video games.
well, and then they just sit on the rights for those, and because it's easier just to sit on IP than it is to actually make anything. Um,
Not making
yeah,
too much now.
Konami I see as a different entity because they haven't done anything in gaming in a while, whereas Square Enix are still pretending, in my view, to be a games
Well,
company and not a grifter.
to a
Uh,
degree, pachinko is sort of games, but it's just not
it's
a
the
part
fact
of the industry that we care about.
it's gambling.
Sort of like a lot of us don't care about like mobile games, because it's just not our forte. Nor Japanese mobile games because it's not even to our understanding. It's
I
just.
just I just feel like what Microsoft are doing, people disagree with because either you don't like consolidation or you're just a rampant Sony fanboy or girl, and you just don't want Microsoft to be competitive, and you want to be able to say that Sony's a better company. Who cares? Whereas what I see Square Enix doing is just going on to be quite possibly one of the worst game companies at the moment in terms of their business decisions around the IP. Obviously, Activision Blizzard King and what was going on with the treatment of staff and sexual harassment and rape and everything like that. That's just abhorrent, and none of the people who are complicit in that, including Bobby Kotick. Did we mention that he actually threatened to have someone killed and nothing happened about it? Is abhorrent, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about decisions that have been made to affect the industry, and
Yeah.
I don't think that what Microsoft are doing is any different to what Tencent are doing. It's just they're more overt. Like Mikey said, they're a platform holder, but they're not gatekeeping anything, at least for the next 10 years. But are people going to remember in 10 years' time the arguments for now? No. They'll say, screw it, I've got a PC, I can play Call of Duty. Why aren't the same people moaning that why does Sony's first party titles have to come out on PC? They're not moaning. They were moaning about it and saying because for some theoretical reason it is theoretical because it's not practical. It somehow devalues their purchase of a PlayStation console. No, it doesn't. It only does that in your mind.
Yeah. But I mean, really circling around back to this, I personally do not have a problem with this acquisition. Like, and it might be short-sighted. It might be just me looking at all the things that actually affect me, because I have a PC. I actually just finished building my new PC this week. So I have a good PC that probably runs better than an Xbox Series X. Oh,
I hope it's made out of wood.
I should hope. That was my last attempt. I was trying to build it out of an old ammo crate, but I just couldn't get the parts to work. Anyway, and I have a PlayStation 5, and to me, I really don't see an issue with this. Is like, do people honestly think that this acquisition will make Microsoft leapfrog Sony so badly? Who, like, Sony has beaten Microsoft the last 2 generations, like
convincingly.
Convincingly. Well. Like Microsoft did not win Xbox versus PS2. It had a lot of good stuff, but it didn't win in these console wars. But it won in the 360 because
did it though? Because that's only in America. Everywhere else it won.
Yeah, everyone else is PlayStation. The only place that the 360 worked was in North America and the UK.
Well, I was just saying, like, there's an argument. It's not clear cut, but there's an argument that it could have won, or at least for a very long time, it could have won. Like, especially if you were thinking third party.
It probably won the short game, but it probably didn't win the long game because it lost all its studios near the end of the 360 development, and Sony was on its hot streak near the end of the PlayStation 3 era.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I was just saying, like, in that slice of, like, you could argue that it won 360, but aside from that, it handedly has not won any of the other generations.
What I'd say is when people react like this, it's normally when someone is faced with a change, your first response is emotional, and normally it's very difficult to convince people out of that initial emotional response. And normally that response is fear, and it's fear of change, or it's fear of loss. But I can't, thinking about this logically, what it is that people think that they're going to be losing.
I personally don't think one damn thing.
I have 2 reasons I don't like this acquisition. I can just say them right now. I don't like consolidation in general. I'm not. Naughty Dog. What?
No, he doesn't work. He works at Naughty.
I work at Naughty Dog. I do not work for Naughty Dog. I do not.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I am contracted.
I was not aware.
Yeah, I'm.
Come on! Like, you don't work for a Naughty Dog, like a computer animated one.
Well, he could work for Mikey's Yorkshire Whippet. For anyone listening to this, Mikey is wearing a flat cap and what looks like a waterproof barber jacket. So I wish he could try and do a Yorkshire accent.
Anyway,
I doubt he could.
So to get to my 2 points was basically, 1, I'm not a fan of consolidation. I don't care what company you are. I don't even care if you're freaking Sony. I think consolidation is bad for every industry, especially if you look at America and like why, like a couple of the reasons of why things are the way they are in regards to, like, if you look at like pharmaceutical prices, it's because there's 3 major pharmaceutical companies that own 80%. They own 85% of all pharmaceuticals. There's food industries that own all of chicken, all of beef, all of that. It's just like, it's ridiculous. And we do not need that with games because it's not going to be healthy for the consumer. It's worse for the consumer. Let's be honest.
They're not buying that much in the grand scheme of games.
I don't. And Keith, I get it, but I don't care. Because once one does, you saw it. Once one started doing it, everyone started doing it like it was the new hotness, and everyone's gonna start doing it and start soaking on all it up. Like I'm not a fan of anyone. I'm a fan of no one doing it.
Consolidation of entertainment. What I care about is what you were talking about: consolidation of things that actually affect people's daily lives. So consolidation of food, consolidation of drugs, consolidation of news media. They are more nefarious.
If I put a tier of nefariousness, yes, I will put those higher on my list. But I still think. Hold on, let me finish my points really quick. I totally get it, but like for me, it's like if one industry does it, other industries will follow, and that's not what I want. I don't want this. I don't want it to be a trend. That's what I'm basically trying to say in that sense. And then my second point...
I just want to point out as well that McWomble's point is very good because with consolidation of those industries, there's nothing you can do about it. You know, you need food to live. You need drugs to survive. You know, with games, you can complain a shit ton and vote with your wallet. You don't have to buy any of the bullshit they peddle to you. You know, you can find other hobbies. You can do other things. You can buy games secondhand. You can do all sorts. But And generally, these companies have been known to listen. You know, they will listen because when their money is on the line, they will react. And I think that's an important distinction.
Yeah, for sure. I just still think, again, like companies follow other company trends because they're all idiots and they all are like, oh, look at what this one did. Oh, if they did it, we should do it too. And it's just like, it's not like they're not thinking it through all the way of like, and also they are in for themselves 100%. It's all a thing. But my second point is, and Keith, you kind of brought this up to the point of being like, what are you losing? I'm losing quality games because I don't trust Microsoft to make good games. And what Microsoft is trying to do is they're trying to take games and put them on their platform to make up for the fact that they can't make games. And that's my problem.
We've been through this, and you and I are in agreement.
Yes.
I know it doesn't happen very often.
I know. I'm just trying to answer Mike's Q question of like what is everyone about? That's what I'm about. I
do understand the trepidation there.
Is it Microsoft have been incapable over the generations of the Xbox One and now this one of coming out with top tier first party games? They've absolutely shit the bed. Like Peyton Manning in the playoffs, he shit the bed. So what they've done is just thought, oh, we've got a few $1 trillion hanging around. Let's go buy some people who can actually make games. But then they've allegedly mismanaged the development of those. So I don't necessarily disagree, but with this purchase, all they're going to do is bring a load of IP under the Microsoft umbrella. I don't think they're going to somehow lose the creativity there in the same way that they have done with previously, like Rare. That everyone just all the main creative lead people there just buggered off elsewhere and left Rare a husk of what it used to be in the EA model. I think you'll lose a few executives. Good. It'd be good if you could just leave them in the desert somewhere without a map and a compass. But I don't necessarily feel the same level of trepidation that you do.
I think where I'm going from with the trepidation in this section is like Activision already doesn't have very much. Like when they had the opportunity to expand and do something like Crash Bandicoot, which I really did. I did enjoy the remake of, or the remaster, whatever you want to. I think it's a remake because it was made from the ground up. So the remake of the original, and enjoyed their sequel very much. And they don't take risks like that anymore. I don't see them taking more risk like that with Microsoft. I see Microsoft just, if Microsoft is doing what they said they're going to do, is leave them alone and let them do their thing, what's going to change? Nothing. And I think Activision should change. And now being owned by Microsoft and having
you putting your expectation on it rather than what Microsoft are trying to do, which is buy a company that's got loads and loads of IP that they can immediately put on their platform and say to all the people who've been saying, "Where's the games, dickhead?" I'm assuming that's what people say to Phil Spencer whenever they see him, maybe even boardrooms.
No, but what I'm trying to say here is like, no, I don't disagree with you at all. Like, that's exactly what they're trying to do. And it's not my expectation. It's that if left alone, if not purchased, it will potentially make them have to pivot more because they don't have the backing of Microsoft behind them to keep doing what they're doing.
I disagree with you. In your own word, I vehemently disagree with you, which is the different, which is like adamant and vehement.
Sorry, you just lost me, Mitch. I was on board, understand it.
Yeah, because Activision have been like that for the last decade, which is
yes, but they started to change.
We've got Call of Duty,
but they did start to change.
Call of Duty, you make $1 billion. You make $1 billion a quarter from Call of Duty Warzone. They're not going to do anything different. Why would they? Square Enix have had to do different stuff because they keep shitting the bed on all of the decisions that they've been making corporately, bringing it back to my point, which is worse. There we go.
Cool.
Thank you very much for...
I just also want to make the succinct point is that I wonder how exactly people are going to feel when this acquisition goes through and suddenly the hell gates are open and everybody's making acquisitions, especially Sony. It's like, I just want to see the exact same people that were saying consolidation bad being like, whoopee, Sony's buying Take-Two. It's just
Sony couldn't afford Take-Two.
Oh my god, they couldn't.
They can, and they probably would. But the point is, it's just like
that would be an interesting one. Actually, as I'll pose a question to you guys. How would the same people complaining about this feel if Sony did buy Take-Two Interactive and they said we're not releasing any Take-Two games on Xbox platforms?
I think the outreach would be equal.
Unless consumer bases. That's all that's going to happen.
Well, unless they were pure Sony ponies, but like myself, like I would be outraged at both, even though it's going to a company I work at.
I think the lion's share of outrage would be less because there are less PlayStation. Well, there are less Xbox fans to complain about it. You know, so it's just like all the Sony ponies are suddenly fine with it, and then all of the Xbox, you know, but they're like, we're recruiting numbers. We need more numbers for our force. You know, it's sort of like a dwindling voice.
They'll just
Hi-Rise and Hi-Fi Rush is the best game this year.
Well, no, they'll just use actual bots.
Well, yeah, they probably will.
Yeah.
Some of Bobby Kotick's old connections will help them buy all of those bots.
Yeah, I just see this as a form of tribalism rather than logical arguments. So I take Mitch. I take your point that over consolidation of anything can be bad. I don't necessarily give a shit when it comes to media. When it comes to entertainment media,
it's fair.
Like I said previously, and people can just make a choice about where they buy their stuff. If the same for me, so I own an Xbox Series X, but I bought a PS4 Pro because Microsoft said we're not going to make any games. All we're going to do is Gears, Halo, and Forza. And at the Xbox One generation, they said Gears, Halo, and Forza and media streaming. And I said, no, thank you. So I'm going to jump ship to Sony. And then I thought, actually, I'm going to get more value out of owning a Series X than I would a PS5 in terms of the amount of games that I can play, and I probably have. Is the quality of those games the same as you all have been able to enjoy on a PS5? Probably not. But I managed to finally unlock all of the alternative moves in Streets of Rage 4 last night. So I think I'm the real winner here.
And on that note,
wearing.
I do quit faffing about getting mad at here.
That's definitely not true.
That's the best I got. I need to go. I need to visit.
I thought Mitch secretly put that in the show.